Welcome back, and thank you for joining me on Mr. Jim's Adventures. Last time, Sebastian and his fellow cadets delved deeper into the science that protects the fleet, learning about the weapons, technology, and closely guarded secrets entrusted to internal security. Meanwhile, Paper continued his investigation into Captain Patrick's mysterious engine project. Today, Sebastian steps outside the classroom for his first official duty assignment. What should have been a quiet evening guarding an old storage vault soon leads to an unexpected discovery. Elsewhere, Kyera faces difficult questions about her future, and Lieutenant Danielson continues preparing the next generation of internal security officers for the challenge ahead. This is Chapter 12 of The Problem with Aether. Sebastian. Sabo watches the docking procedures. The last time he watched Captain Cash go through this routine, things had been a lot different. Unless I break some major rule, Patrick can do nothing about my presence nor about the weapons I carry. All IS officers, even cadets, are armed when on duty. The procedure goes well. No blinking lights this time, and within moments the hatch opens. In the passage stands a giant of a man in an IS uniform. He stands 6'4" or more, and is a sturdy, muscular 260 pounds. Instead of the standard blade, this officer carries a metal pole that is as long as he is and sports a spike on one end. Are you Cadet Snow? Without waiting for an answer, he continues, I am Lieutenant Everett. We will be serving together this evening. Follow me. The lieutenant leads Sebo through the ship. This evening we will provide security for a rarely used high security storage unit. The unit is rarely entered, which is why we are checking into it. IS has arranged for its trusted scientists to examine the contents. It is all stuff that has been there for over 10 years. Space is scarce. IS has arranged for its trusted scientists to evaluate the contents. Our function is twofold. First, we make sure that the unit remains secure and nobody gets into it. Second, trusted scientists or not, some of the contents are potentially dangerous, so we are to make sure nothing leaves the unit without going through the incinerator first. From his earlier planning sessions involving this vessel, Sebastian is very familiar with the layout. He quickly figures they are taking the long way around to avoid getting near the bridge and the officers' quarters. Lieutenant, feel free to speak, cadet. While on duty, we cannot allow respect for rank to prevent us from doing our duty. Lieutenant, I think if we cut through the hydroponics lab here, we can shorten our trip. This passage goes around the lab with nothing else down it but an emergency airlock. Unless you are planning to eject me into space, we might as well save a few steps in a couple of minutes. They take a few steps without the lieutenant saying anything. You're not ejecting me, are you? Oh no, Everett laughs. Not this time. I was just wondering about my instructions. I was told to take a roundabout path and not let you know. I think I failed. Sorry about that, but I have studied this ship. I would have to be blindfolded not to know where I was. Even the few spaces I couldn't get a look at for security reasons would have something about them that I think I would recognize. Why would there be spaces on the ship that an IS officer doesn't have access to? Lieutenant, I wasn't in IS when I studied the ship, but I am pretty sure there are places we still couldn't go to. There is a series of compartments, an area as big as the arbor, that is sealed tight with only the captain and somebody listed as MP having access. The coating on it was so tight, I bet even IS would have problems getting into it or even getting it on camera. The glyphs were blood coded to them and alerted the captain if anyone tampered with them. Wow. Well, now, I guess I'll have to look into this, but that's for another day. Let's take your shortcut and get on with tonight's business. 5 minutes later, Everett toggled a switch on a hatch, so Sebo quickly checks it with insight. The toggle is coded with fingerprint patterns. If your prints match one of the stored patterns, the hatch will open. I see you're already here, Professor. Inside is a plump man in his mid-30s. His spectacles rest on the end of his nose. The room is a cube about 20 feet to his side, with the inward and outward walls being slightly curved. It is stacked deck to ceiling with crates, leaving a small area in the middle clear. Everett steps to the side, giving Sabo a chance to enter. This is Cadet Snow. We will be the security for this evening's detail. Fine, fine. Let's get going then. You two can guard over by the door. I have a lot of material to review, and I don't want you getting in my way. Professor, this is Snow's first duty. We need to show him the proper procedures. Besides, you don't want us over there. Who would move all these big crates? That is good. That I can work with. We start with this box. The professor smiles and points to the crate at the top of the largest stack. Snow, you heard the man. Fetch the box, Professor Herbert requested, while I secure the hatch and get the keys. Sebo maneuvers overhead rigging to a point above the crate. He then climbs the stack to secure the chain and carefully guide the crate to the clear space on the deck. Good. Now watch as I do this first one. The professor will read the number off the printout he has, and I will compare that number to the one on our sheet. Then we both compare that to the number on the seal. Once we confirm it is the same, one of us will use the IS key, and he will use his key simultaneously. Everett glances at Sebo to make sure he's listening. Understood? Yes, sir. Good. Anything he deems can be destroyed, we will put in that incinerator chute. He points at a slot on the wall. Anything else will be stored and repacked. We will consolidate crates as we go. Hopefully, we can clear at least half of this out. The crates that will stay will be cataloged, locked, and resealed. The serial numbers on the seal will be recorded, and in a couple of years, some other officer and a cadet will go through this whole thing again. A few hours later, a hot and sweaty cadet lowers yet another crate and prepares to compare serial numbers. Sabo finds he has been doing the majority of the work in order to make sure he gets the procedure down pat. But he doesn't really mind. It makes the time go by, and he's had a lot of opportunities to review the material with the professor. He wonders why most of this is ever kept. It's mainly requisitions for material and receipts on the transfer of those materials. Though there are also scientific papers, various designs for machinery, and consensus reports on supplies, populations, and estimates of how long the supplies would last with the current rate of growth. Like the last few boxes, this one contains handwritten notes from a very prolific writer. It's notes and drawings on equipment, improvements, and scattering of formulas that go way beyond anything Sabo had ever studied in school. Though this one does have a model of the device being discussed. Here, boy, help me lift this thing out of the way. It is two sectioned rings, each about 3 feet in diameter. One of the rings has three trailing arms that reach back toward the other ring, but never quite touching it. The second has three matching branches. These bend toward the center of the device and are connected by a sphere. The two pieces never touch but are held in place, bound together, probably by some glyph or perhaps even a hermetic ritual. It looks vaguely familiar, but he can't place it. Professor Herbert ignored it in favor of the drawings and formulas on the papers that had been under it. Sabo couldn't understand those, but there were glyphs covering the whole model. Squinting slightly, he studies it. Insight shows the device has been functional and activated sometime in the past. Faint lines emanate from the device, forming a sphere. Hey, Professor, this looks like some modified Sloan engine. Yes, it does. Why are you examining the material? You're not supposed to. You're only supposed to guard. On a more formidable person, the scowl he gives Sebo would have been intimidating instead of amusing. Never mind, the formulas are all wrong. It is junk. But the glyph works. I saw a shield forming, just like the one in front of the fleet. What? Both the lieutenant and the professor examined the model. I don't see no shield, but the kid is right. These glyphs are working and active. Just a push in the right direction and something is going to happen. Yes, Lieutenant. The question is what? The formulas seem all backwards. I do not recommend pushing any of it in any direction. Who knows what will happen? After all, the last thing this guy invented that wasn't strongly supervised ruined Earth. Herbert examines the model a few more moments. Lieutenant, I know this isn't procedure, but is there anything we can do to have this thing taken where it can be examined more thoroughly? I don't see why not, but that's a decision way above my pay grade. Let me get on the horn and we'll see what I can do. Everett picks up the handset attached to the wall, dials a number, and begins to talk. From this side of the conversation, it is apparent that he's talking to several people, explaining the request each time. Finally, he hangs up and turns to the other two. This shift is about up anyway. So we have orders to pack everything up and seal it and lock it. Another security team will pick it up and have it delivered to your labs. While out of the vault, it will be continuously guarded until returned here or destroyed. Sabo is ordered to keep watch on the hatch and to keep his eyes off any other items he might see. Everett and Herbert carefully repack and lock and reseal the box. All three leave, and the fingerprint-coated hatch is closed. As the two IS men head towards the docking bays, they remain quiet until the professor turns down a different passageway and is well out of earshot. Cadet, that was a boneheaded move. That material is supposed to be top secret. The professor is likely to make a formal complaint, which means you are going to get into a lot of trouble for nothing. For nothing? You saw it. That device was a true find. It would be functional if turned on. Yes, for nothing. The IS side of the keys are enchanted. Everything in each box was recorded and transmitted before the professor got a chance to look at it. We have copies of all of it. But the engine would have been destroyed. Yeah, the engine. Did it look like the device would have fit into the incinerator slot? No, it didn't. It would have been placed in a sealed container to be picked up by a security team for disposal. If you had simply informed me of what you saw, we would have that thing in our custody in one of our labs by mid-afternoon. Instead, you had to open your big mouth, and the professor is going to get first crack at it. Eugene. Captain Patrick, Ensign Patrick reporting as ordered. Kyera stands at attention and snaps a salute. Kyera, I did not request your presence as your captain. Today, I'm just your dad. Captain Eugene Patrick smiles at his little girl. He notices she's not so little anymore. Even as she drops the salute and smiles, she no longer rushes into his arms as she used to. Okay, Daddy, what did you want me for? I just want to talk. It seems ages since we last just sat and had a conversation. My sister's telling me a few things that I would have heard from you first not that long ago. Kyera steps further into the room and sits next to him. Now, Daddy, we both know Aunt Rosalie doesn't look at the universe the same way everyone else does. When she gets something in her head, no amount of talk or evidence will make her change her mind. She sees what she wants to see. Perhaps, but she did see that boy Snow. He was visiting you on her ship. He's not a boy. He's an IS officer, or will be when he finishes the academy. Is that what you want for your life? Be a soldier's girl traveling from duty station to duty station, never having a place you can call home? It's not a bad life, Daddy. Eventually, he will gain enough rank to get a long-term post, a place where we can settle down in. But what about your dreams? You used to prattle on about running your own ship, taking a command, and being the captain of your own destiny. Kyera stands, taking a few steps towards the wall. Even with a big desk, an extra chair for guests, and the old trunk they had been sharing as a seat, there is room to pace. Through the hatch is another whole compartment for sleeping, cooking, and personal space. A ship's captain is the only one with such luxury. Daddy, you picked this compartment on purpose. That's not playing fair. I don't know what you're talking about. All my meetings are in this compartment. It is my office, after all. His barely concealed grin gives lie to his words. She glares at him, or tries to, but suddenly giggles. You're right, I know. This is one of the best perks of becoming a captain. But there is no guarantee that I will make it to captain. There are years of trials and training just to become first officer, then more years gaining experience, and finally there's the required vote from the committee. There is no guarantee. Daughter, all things worth having are worth working for. As for guarantee, you have one of the best chances in the fleet. You have been at my side learning to be a good officer since you could walk. You will pass the trials easily. You will be a first officer in less than 5 years. 2 years after that, you'll be eligible for a captaincy. Your name will go before the committee. You have the right connections to make you a shoe-in. I command the Perseus, the ship that generates power for the rest of the fleet, the most prestigious non-military ship in the fleet. Your aunt has been building a cadre of loyal supporters in her bid to be the next captain voted to the triumvirate. A vote against you is a vote against both of us. None of the committee members would risk that. You make it sound so easy, but I love Sabo. What kind of life will being a soldier's wife bring you? What type of life would your child have? Until he gets high up in rank, 15 to 20 years from now, if a position open, You would have no security, years of drifting from one command to the next. Your entire living compartment would fit in this office. He doesn't have the right connections to rise in the ranks swiftly. Some would say he was born with the worst connections possible, and he seems intent on dragging that relationship into the open. It is highly unlikely he would ever be promoted above lieutenant, a nobody. I'm not asking you to up and forget him. Talk with him. Tell him about your concerns. If he truly cares about you, he'll see what is best for you. And this doesn't mean you can't be together. After his current hitch, he can always leave IS. Any ship would love to have a security officer with a background at IS. Your ship could have that benefit. Eugene stands to take the few paces to the bulkhead. He stands quiet for a few seconds as he stares out the oversized porthole, another perk of being a captain. Kyera, don't make any promises now except this. Promise that you will think about what we talked about. Promise that you will talk this over with your young man. Yes, Daddy. Danielson. Okay, let's who read their assignment. Cadet G, why did Hitler finally surrender to the Allied forces? In response to Lieutenant Danielson, Min leaps to attention by her desk. Sir, he didn't surrender. He simply disappeared. His supporters say he ascended, but the Allied investigators found evidence that he was disintegrated by his own people, though they do not know how it was done. Good, but do not elaborate on the answer. Everyone keep in mind the trivia about Hitler's ascension is purely conjecture that is not in the book and is highly frowned upon by the governments of Earth. So if we ever get back there, be careful who you mention that to. Okay, so Hitler disappeared, so what? The German Aryan army had already conquered Russia and had its massive reserves of supplies. Kumulo, why did his followers not keep up the battle? Sir, the reunited states had already dropped the plague bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Everyone was afraid of North America. At the time, they didn't have a cure for the plague. If they decided to drop the bomb in Europe, they could have wiped out the continent, clear of life, like they did Japan. Eventually, only the Americans and Australia would have survived. Still, the Aryan Church was willing to take the risk. The American idea of total equality, despite religion, ethnicity, gender, and a host of other things like wealth that had previously divided them, was totally against what they believed. They were ready to take up the reins of the war machine. Then their own hermetical scientists announced that they had discovered Hitler was not a true Aryan, some of sort of mixed blood with Middle Eastern or Greco-Roman heritage. At that point, so many Aryans were disillusioned that the church fell apart. Very good. Please take your seat. It was during the last dash effort to revive the church that the story of Hitler's ascension was circulated. But whether or not it is true, the church has already crumbled beyond repair. Danielson activated his insight. He focuses that and everything he had learned about human psychology and human reactions upon these new recruits for his next statement. It is imperative that IS know the true leanings of the new recruits. However, the Aryan church was not completely destroyed. Every now and then a pocket of people show up sowing discontent and are eventually exposed as an Aryan cult. Good, all their physical reactions are normal, and insight doesn't show anything unusual either. This is highly problematic to IS. We believe everyone has the right to practice their faith and uphold those rights. Point of fact, we have 7 known Aryan covens in operation in the fleet. Due to the general perception of the Aryans after the war, they keep themselves secret. I know that 2 of you have had contact with members of these cults and never realized what they were. Cadet Daxon stands up at attention next to his desk. Daxon, you have a question? Danielson observes this is the first time this cadet had ever volunteered. Sir, since the ultimate decree of the Aryan cult is that they are to rule over everybody else, and that non-Aryans are somehow inferior and should be punished for not being Aryan, shouldn't we lock them all up and throw away the keys? We cannot shut down and stamp out this religion, at least not until the cult or members of it start to cause harm to others. That is when we can step in. Even then, we can only arrest those we can prove were part of the disruption. As long as they aren't spreading hate and discontent, they're a pretty decent lot. They follow the rules, teach their kids manners, and work hard. Wish I could say that of most of the rest of the fleet. But we digress. We are talking about the end of the Second World Witch War. Some people say the United States could have taken over the world at that point. There's evidence that they considered the idea, but like the IS, the RUS would have faced a serious moral dilemma. Forcing everybody to accept their ways was contradictory to their ways. As it turned out, they didn't need to. With the recent example of the Aryans fresh in their minds, the world adopted, for the most part, the Civil Unity Accords, even if they did not officially sign the treaty. For 70 very profitable years, this became the way of life. It was this worldwide era of cooperation that made it possible to evacuate so many people from Earth. It is IS's task to ensure that we stay true to those accords. It's why we keep tabs on everything and everybody, or attempt to anyway. Part of their accords is to urge each citizen to do their best to further the prosperity of the whole. So IS also keeps track of trends. Fashion, the sciences, and even entertainment are part of our purview. Danielson's watch beeps. Well, class, that's it for today. Tonight, read the next chapter. It will go into more detail on the cleanup after the war. Be prepared to discuss this tomorrow. Dismissed. As they file out, Lieutenant Danielson pulls Sebastian aside. Cadet Snow, I have been asked to forestall you going to the range this afternoon. Be sure you will get there eventually, but first you are to report to Major General Sardinan's offices once this class is over. So hop to it. It's never a good idea to keep the brass waiting. Thank you for listening to Chapter 12 of The Problem with Aether. Next time, Sebastian is summoned to meet one of the fleet's highest ranking officers, where routine punishment becomes something far more unexpected. A secret mission is offered. Dangerous news changes the political landscape of the fleet, and while Sebastian begins his first assignment, Kyera faces a decision that will alter both of their futures. Before the day is over, one impulsive moment plunges an entire ship into darkness. Until then, this is Mr. Jim. Thank you for listening, and I will see you on our next adventure.